This is my ranking of games like Final Fantasy Tactics that I've played, based purely on my personal experience. Each one is placed from masterpiece down to trash, depending on how deep the tactical combat is, how well positioning and strategy matter, and how engaging the progression and story feel. Let's get straight into the list. Wildermyth stood out right away because every campaign felt like a story I was helping create instead of simply following. I started with a small group of heroes, but over time their friendships, rivalries, and personal moments shaped the adventure in unexpected ways. The comic book presentation kept the narrative moving, and I liked seeing how choices could change events across an entire campaign. Combat was another highlight, offering enough depth to make positioning and team combinations matter without becoming difficult to understand. Mixing different classes led to some clever strategies, especially when abilities worked together during tough battles. The legacy system also made each completed journey feel meaningful since favorite characters could return in future runs. Few tactical RPGs blend storytelling and combat this well. That earns a place in my masterpiece tier. Front Mission 3 Remake grabbed my interest with its mix of giant robots, tactical battles, and branching story paths. I liked the idea of making choices that could lead to different events, and there was plenty of background lore for players who enjoy digging into a game's world. The combat still had some satisfying moments, especially when upgrading machines and planning attacks across the map. At the same time, several parts did not work as well as I hoped. The story characters never clicked with me. The extra online-style menus felt awkward to use, and battles often seemed simpler than they should have been. I kept playing because the core strategy was still there, but the package felt uneven. In the end, I placed it in my good tier without moving higher on my list. Sword of Convallaria immediately stood out because it mixed classic tactical RPG combat with modern systems that constantly pushed new rewards, currencies, and upgrades at me. Once I got past the confusing opening, I found a strategy game that was easy to learn and satisfying to play. Building a team, planning movement, and using different character abilities made battles fun without overwhelming me. I also liked the pixel art style, which looked detailed and full of personality, while the soundtrack added extra energy to important moments. The story did not connect with me as much as I hoped, and some of the mobile-style systems felt unnecessary. Even so, the strong combat and presentation kept me interested long after the early confusion faded away. This settles comfortably into my great tier. Troubleshooter Abandoned Children surprised me with just how much freedom it gave me to build and customize my team. At first, it looked like a standard tactical RPG, but the deeper I got, the more systems, abilities, and character options opened up. I spent a lot of time experimenting with different builds, finding new combinations and adjusting my squad for specific battles. Combat stayed engaging because there was always another strategy to try or another way to improve a character. The story and writing were not the main reason I kept playing, but the gameplay loop made it difficult to stop. Every mission felt like a chance to test new ideas and make my team stronger. The depth and replay value pushed this into my excellent tier. Super Robot Wars won me over with the way it brought together so many different robot series into one huge adventure. Even when I did not know every franchise in the roster, the game made it easy to enjoy the characters and their interactions. I liked seeing heroes from different worlds fight side by side, and the story constantly introduced new faces, surprises, and over-the-top moments. Combat had more depth than I expected, with positioning, special abilities, morale management, and team support all playing important roles. Watching powerful attacks unfold never got old, and the soundtrack added even more energy to every battle. The large number of menus could be frustrating, and some storylines interested me less than others. Even with those issues, I ended up placing this in my good tier. Our Adventurer Guild won me over with how much it packed into such a simple-looking package. I started by building a small group of adventurers, but before long, I was managing recruits, training characters, upgrading equipment, and deciding who was best suited for each mission. The guild management side kept me engaged, while the tactical battles gave me plenty of reasons to experiment with different classes, skills, and team setups. I also enjoyed the writing more than I expected, with character interactions and conversations adding personality between missions. Nothing here felt overly complicated, yet there was always another decision to make or another way to improve my roster. The visuals were not the main attraction, but the gameplay more than made up for that. This finds its place in my great tier. Tactics Ogre Reborn kept me invested because every battle felt like a meaningful test of positioning, class choices, and team strategy. I spent a lot of time building a balanced squad, combining frontline fighters, ranged attackers, healers, and magic users to handle different situations. The story also stood out, with major decisions shaping how events unfolded and giving me reasons to think carefully before making choices. I appreciated the quality of life improvements that made battles smoother, while the tactical gameplay remained as rewarding as ever. Not everything worked perfectly, especially some frustrating AI decisions and a few difficulty spikes that felt unfair. Even so, the strong combat, memorable world, and satisfying sense of progression kept me pushing forward through every chapter. That was enough to secure its place in my excellent tier. Disgaea, 7 Vows of the Virtueless, brought back everything I enjoy about the series, while adding enough new ideas to keep things fresh. I spent a lot of time experimenting with different classes, abilities, and team setups, because there always seemed to be another strategy worth trying. The battles were packed with options, from moving units through clever throws to manipulating geo panels for huge advantages. I also had fun with the game's humor, which never took itself too seriously and kept the adventure entertaining between fights. The new Jumbify mechanic added some memorable moments, especially when battles suddenly became much more chaotic. The higher difficulty and occasional performance issues could be frustrating, but they never outweighed the strong tactical gameplay. That lands it comfortably in my great tier. Brigandine, the Legend of Runersia, caught my attention with its mix of large-scale kingdom management and tactical battles. At first, all the menus and systems looked intimidating, but once I understood how everything worked, planning armies and expanding across the continent became surprisingly satisfying. I enjoyed recruiting monsters, building different army compositions, and deciding where to strengthen my borders before launching attacks. The turn-based battles were simple to learn, but offered enough depth to keep me thinking about positioning and target priority. I also liked that every nation had its own story and characters, which made multiple playthroughs feel worthwhile. The visuals were not the strongest part of the experience, but the strategy elements carried the game from beginning to end. I ended up putting this in my good tier. Triangle strategy stood apart from other tactical RPGs because the choices felt just as important as the battles. I was constantly asked to make difficult decisions, and many of them did not have obvious right or wrong answers. That made me pay much closer attention to the story, the politics between nations, and the motivations of the characters involved. When battles did arrive, they rewarded careful planning and teamwork instead of simply relying on stronger units. I liked setting up flanking attacks, protecting vulnerable allies, and finding ways to use each character's strengths effectively. The pacing could feel slow because of the large amount of story between encounters, but I stayed invested thanks to the strong writing and world building. In my ranking, this takes its place within the great tier. Reverse Collapse Codename Bakery grabbed my attention by combining a serious story with tactical combat that demanded careful planning. I liked how every mission started before the battle even began, with time spent upgrading characters, preparing equipment, and studying the battlefield. That extra layer of preparation made each decision feel important once combat started. During battles, I had to think about positioning, terrain, enemy sightlines, and how to use limited resources effectively. The story also kept me engaged, with political conflict, advanced technology, and unexpected developments pushing the narrative forward. I appreciated how much detail went into the character progression systems and weapon customization, giving me many ways to approach challenges. Few tactical RPGs balance strategy, preparation, and storytelling this well. That secures a place in my masterpiece tier. Lost Eidolons' Veil of the Witch drew me in with its mix of tactical battles and roguelike progression. Every run felt like a chance to learn something new, whether it was discovering stronger character combinations, unlocking upgrades at camp, or finding better ways to handle difficult enemies. I liked how each party member brought unique abilities to the battlefield, and switching weapons to exploit weaknesses added another layer of strategy. The story also kept me interested, slowly revealing more about Ash and the strange world around him after every attempt. Battles could be brutal, and some bosses pushed me harder than I expected, but that challenge made victories feel more rewarding. Despite a few balance issues and interface frustrations, I kept coming back for more. That earns a place in my excellent tier. Dark Deity 2 kept me interested by focusing on what makes tactical RPGs fun without trying to reinvent the genre. I spent a lot of time experimenting with different classes, abilities, and equipment setups, and I liked how even characters that seemed average at first could become valuable with the right upgrades. The story started slowly, but I enjoyed watching the three siblings grow as they became caught up in a larger conflict. Battles rewarded careful positioning and smart use of skills, while side objectives added extra challenges that were worth pursuing. I also appreciated the flexibility to customize characters through promotions, runes, and crafted equipment. It did not bring many new ideas to the table, but the solid combat and character building kept me engaged throughout. This settles into my great tier. Aether Iron immediately stood out because it took a very different approach to tactical RPG combat. Instead of fighting across traditional maps, I was managing high-speed car chases where positioning, timing, and resource management mattered just as much as attacking. I enjoyed figuring out how to move around hazards, line up attacks, and create chain reactions when enemies crashed into one another. Outside of combat, the story kept me engaged with its mix of noir mystery, political intrigue, and interesting character relationships. I also liked how dialogue choices and skill checks could influence different situations, making exploration feel worthwhile. The setting itself felt unique, blending futuristic technology with an alternate 1930s world. Some technical issues and an uneven finale held it back a little, but I still placed it in my great tier. King Arthur Knight's Tale kept me playing because the tactical combat was much stronger than I expected. I spent a lot of time scouting enemy positions, planning attacks, and figuring out how to keep my party alive through difficult encounters. The battles rewarded patience and smart use of abilities, especially when dealing with heavily armored enemies or large groups that could quickly overwhelm my team. I also liked developing characters through their skill trees and upgrading my castle between missions, which added a satisfying sense of progression. The darker take on Arthurian legends did not work as well for me, and many story moments felt more focused on being grim than meaningful. Even so, the strong gameplay carried the experience and kept me invested through the campaign. I ended up placing this in my good tier. That's it for my ranking of games like Final Fantasy Tactics. The journey had plenty of hard-fought victories, and a few battles I won't forget anytime soon. Thanks for watching.